Welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we know that. Today we have a spooky
episode
in honor of Halloween coming up here, so we thought we would do a good topic, financial fears.
I'm so scared. I feel like I miss my calling as an actor in a scary movie, because either I could show the really, really scared face, like or I could be like that, like
just the cutaway.
I feel like always in scary movies, there's always like some little petite woman that's getting abused by a large man. Like I'm watching Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, and they're always beating up on some little petite person.
They can't run; they trip. Like
right, and it's like I'm like, man, if I was ever in one of these movies, I feel like I would match up very well against the killer. Like he'd be like, "Whoa, all right, I don't want to kill this guy." It'd be way too hard to do that, right? Or a jujitsu master, right? Like, why do they never fight those guys? I don't know, whatever. I'm sorry. I get off on tangents. I'm always like, why are you doing that in the scary movie? Don't go up the stairs.
Well, hopefully our listeners will find some ways to handle their financial
fears.
Yes,
don't run up the financial stairs of fear when things are going awry, right? Don't run up the stairs. Run out the front door.
As Dracula would say, that was awful batty. Say that.
Oh, my God.
I'm
going to fall out of my chair by the end of this episode. Mark has been ripping one-liners for like an hour now. Like, oh, my God. Okay, cool.
Excellent. So, I thought that a good episode here would be to address really the 5 fears that clients have. And,
sure.
Really just delve into them and maybe help clients understand some ways to work through those fears, right?
Yeah. And one thing that's true is that we know this, that is fear is wired in our brains, right? Fear actually drives us, and there's no way to overcome it. You're going to be scared of something, no matter what it is, unless you're a sociopath, right? Mark? He's got a knife under the table at all times, right? But yeah, fear. We're wired for fear. That's how our brains are built, and we gotta compartmentalize it and do a great job of trying to just deal with it and not let it overtake us, right?
Well, let's get started. Let's flip our hourglass. As I have my little prop here for those listeners that
is a hand from a real skeleton.
A little skeleton hand.
We just
right?
skinned him last night. It's no big deal. Whatever.
Excellent. So, I think the first fear that we hear all the time, and not necessarily around Halloween, but anytime there's questions, that's the fear of the market.
Sure.
Right, and that is a big fear, right? And that's why a lot of people don't invest or make the wrong decisions on investing.
Right. Do I come? Do I go? Is it time to go in? I always love to hear that question. Like, hey, is this the time? Right? And it's like, well, yeah. If you asked me that question 20 years ago, yes.
Yep. Or should I get out? I want
to get out now. Is this the time to get out? Right before the election, or right before this war started, right? And it's
Yeah, and I would ask listeners to ask themselves, when do you ask those questions? After the market drops, are you asking, should I get out?
Right.
Right, and when
that hindsight, right?
Right, and when the market is at its all-time high, are you asking, should I get in?
Right.
Right. The old adage, buy low, sell high. Right. Well, that goes out the window, right, with fear.
I mean, and it's we've been lucky enough to have great training in our careers and great experience. And if your advisor is calling you and saying, hey, it's time to harvest, right? Mm-hmm. Take some gains off the table and protect yourself a little bit. You ought to listen.
Yeah, I like the autumn Thanksgiving pun of harvest.
Right, the harvest. Right, like, Mark, we're working. We're clean today, baby. Here's a fun question for you. Right, we'll leave it to our listeners. Right, what is the name of Frankenstein's monster? Right, do you know the name of Frankenstein's monster? You would think it's Frankenstein, right? Like everyone assumes it's Frankenstein. Do you know the answer?
Little Frankenstein.
Little baby Frankenstein, right? The name of Frankenstein's monster is Adam. Being it the firstborn of Frankenstein, very biblical, right, in its approach. But I'm going to transition away from the market and into taxes, because that's the first thing usually on people's minds that they're scared of outside the market.
Yeah, right.
Which is, how much do I owe this year? Am I going to get a 1099? Did my investments do really well? Did I sell a rental property?
Or the worst fear, which is I don't make a financial move because I'm afraid of taxes.
I'm afraid to do a Roth conversion. I'm afraid to make a swap or a switch in my account, because I'm going to have a tax liability.
Yeah, I don't want to sell this stock because it's high.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to pay Uncle Sam.
Yep.
Well, in most cases, paying Uncle Sam means that you made money.
You mean the vampire? I mean Uncle Sam.
Yes. He's there to tax you.
Oh, God. It's gonna be brutal. You're gonna get so many corny jokes on the feed. I wish we had like a live feed on this. Like, oh, dude, you're awful. That's great. I mean, yeah, but you know, truthfully though, it's like, are you paying your taxes on time? Did you pay too much? Did you pay too little? You know, what really can go wrong is in the world of a lot of the speakers we've heard talk. You know, Murphy always shows up on the battlefield, right? And it's like, I could definitely screw it up if I don't have a great tax plan.
Yeah, and the best way to make sure that you don't have that fear is to have that conversation with your advisor and your CPA, right? Working hand in hand so that you know the game plan or the strategy coming up. You know, at the end of the year where you can offset a loss or offset a gain.
Sure.
You know, and that's that's part of just being proactive with your tax plan.
I always love hearing that with clients that, though, I got a huge gain I can offset. I can take some losses, or I have a lot of losses I can offset. I can take some gains, and then, it didn't work out. Oh, I didn't realize I couldn't carry forward and all that other.
Well, and to drill down on that just a little bit more, I mean, we're doing a intergenerational planning.
Yes, that's coming up next week. I'm very excited for that.
Seminar panel discussion with a CPA firm and a law firm. And that's why it's very important for those people to work together, because a lot of times we'll get the notice that people owed more taxes than they should have paid.
Yep.
Because their CPA didn't talk to us.
Right. And
we couldn't
becomes a major problem.
Hey, let's free exchange this mutual fund to another one and create a loss.
Correct.
Right. So some simple solutions that we could have done to help them out if we were talking with them.
Yeah. Well, again, that fear drives us, and we don't want it to let it drive you into a hole. We want it to drive you to freedom.
Yeah. And the other one that we see a lot of times for people that are already retired is the fear of living too long.
Not if you're mummified.
Yes, as long as you're embalmed, you're fine. So, but that fear of living too long, when you think of it, it's like, wait a minute, I want to live longer, right? The alternative is not a good thing, but it is taxing for your investments.
Your quality of life.
Yeah, and people are afraid they don't have enough money put away for inflation, for the cost of goods, and other things as they age. And people are living, right, obviously a lot longer into retirement today.
Now, especially with banks becoming as stringent as they have, fear of where is my money going? What is it doing? Did I have too much asset in the bank? Do I have too much asset? There's a lot of fear there with older couples, because I'm in my 80s. How much bank asset do I need? Right? How much money do I need available at all times? Yeah. Am I risking leaving too much money in a bank account if something goes wrong?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, this is a perfect example why a great Social Security strategy can help you protect you against living too long, perhaps in a deferral strategy, or even a good strategy that relies on dividends or other fixed income sources to help protect against that.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to rise your income as high as you can and take pressure off your investments as most you can, but sometimes you're going to have to get an investment, right?
Yes. Yes. Just like you rise out of the grave.
Rise from the grave. Oh, that's great. Another fear people have is fear of missing out, right? FOMO. I feel like that FOMO fear, it goes right back to, is it time to sell? Is it time to buy? And the question you got to ask yourself is, do you have a balance in your portfolio? There's a lot of people I've talked to, and hey, the market's always going to go up, right? And it's going to go down, and there's volatility, right? Yeah. So it's a question of balance, and it's a question of whether or not the portfolio is set up the way it should be for you in your particular situation.
Yeah, and a lot of times that fear of missing out comes when the market's hitting all-time highs.
Absolutely.
Right, which sometimes is the worst
like
time to get into the market.
All the air is in the balloon, and now you're spiking it with a needle, right? Like, is this the right time to buy? I see everything is doing great. Whereas we've had this conversation before. I had deja vu. When the market goes down, right, that's when your advisor should be calling you. Why? To make your Roth contribution, right? To drop in that money that you have sitting around that's been on the sideline for the last 3 years.
Return those bottles, get the refund.
Man, like
Shake your kids upside down, get some change out of them.
Mark kind of changed my brain 3 or 4 years ago. He had a situation where a client had left money in the bank for like 3 years. And then COVID happened, and Mark called him and said, hey, you got that 60 or 80 grand in the bank still? I need it. Now it's time to go. Yeah. So for that 3 years in the bank, he earned almost next to nothing. Yep. He ended up taking $80,000, pushed it into the market when the market was at 17 during COVID. Yep. Now the market's at 40, right? Just in general, like the Dow is at 40.
Yeah, and sometimes
right?
the best thing you can do is sit in cash and wait for the opportunity.
Sometimes, sure.
Not all the time, but sometimes, and that's important to understand within a plan, and that gets you ready so that when it is time to get in there, you don't miss out.
Right.
So it solves that fear. And I would think the last one we probably want to discuss today is also the fear of change, right?
Yes.
And we see this not just in the financial, space, and we referred to that with moving money around here or there. But a lot of times people, once they set a financial plan, it stays the same forever, and the market changes, their life changes,
the landscape changes around them,
and because they fear change, they don't change their plan to coincide with the life changes that are happening around them.
Correct.
And and as you get older, right? A lot of people, as they get older, they want less change. They don't like change,
right?
But unfortunately, their investments may need to.
I mean, if you drill down on that truth, right? You have to be cognizant of educating clients in the right way so they don't get scared to the point where they're unable to make a decision.
Yeah.
Right? Because worse than making no changes is making no changes because I'm scared or I don't necessarily know why I'm making a change.
Yeah, exactly. And we see that specifically in periods of transition, right? Yep. From work to retirement, from retirement to long-term care, from kids being born to college, where the strategy that they had 15, 20 years ago is not protecting them for the risk that there is today.
Correct.
And that sometimes change is good. There's actually a book out there called Who Moved My Cheese? And it talks about change. And it's a good book that if listeners are going through change right now, maybe in the workplace environment or in their life and personal, it's a good book to pick up. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? It's been around for a long time, and a lot of companies use that when they go through mergers and acquisitions and things like that. But a good resource for
I'll push that kids book again too that we talked about last time, the Squirrel Manifesto. I love reading that to Lincoln. My daughter has a better math brain than my son. He's got an artist's brain. He's very capable when it comes to a pen. He could probably draw better than me. I'm terrible at drawing. Awful, right?
Say, that's not too.
Sorry, it's not hard. But
I saw your self-portrait.
Stick figure, right? But really big head, really small body. I don't know what happened. But that book for kids is great because it gets kids starting to understand about saving and deferring some money and waiting till later. But I'll add one more fear here that I noticed wasn't on here was fear of being unprepared. Right, unpreparedness. Right, we right now we got to be timely. There's a huge dock strike going on in the on the East Coast and some of the West Coast. If you don't have some water saved in your basement, if you don't have some extra stores of food, if you haven't thought ahead,
same thing with the hurricane,
right, and then the hurricane on top of that, right? Yep. I'm listening on the radio, and the radio says, oh, everything is fine. You watch on TV, oh, everything is fine. Well, right before COVID, everything was fine. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm not creating a panic, but in the sense of retirement goals and planning, fear, the being unprepared or the fear of unpreparedness creates more friction and stress to your life.
Lines, I read an article this morning. There was a gentleman that was, just touting the fact that he made a huge mistake by not having cash on hand, and being in that Asheville area that got wiped out.
Got wiped out,
There's
man.
no internet, which doesn't allow you to.
I can't do a transaction.
Any business.
I can't do a transaction.
You can't do a transaction. You can't buy anything. You can't buy gas. Right? If you don't have cash on hand, what are you going to do? Or if the internet connection is not there, for everything that's mostly digital nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's a very important point. I think you point out. What other thing is a really good book for our listeners to get?
What's that?
That's for them to contact Iron Tree Financial
and
pick up our quarterly magazines.
The magazine.
Here's a nice magazine that we send out, and we send a digital version out to our prospects and clients. But in here is also a way for us to communicate events, activities, links to our podcast.
Ooh, there's a recipe. Is there like a spooky recipe in there?
The cool thing about this magazine is it's not financial centered.
Correct.
Right, because we want people to keep it.
Right.
Right. So it's got tons of recipes in here, travel ideas, home ideas, and this is something that we put out to our clients consistently throughout the year in a nice digital format.
It's pretty cool.
It is actually really cool to look at on the phone as well. The mobile or app version of it is really smooth when you're reading through it and want to transition from page to page.
Sam can do a little zoom in.
If you'd like to be on the list to receive our magazine that goes out, you can reach Iron Tree Financial at Cetera IS. com. At Cetera.is for the email. You can reach us at 43 British American Boulevard in Latham, New York, 12110. You can call us at 844-444-YTYM for your time, your money. As always, we thank you so much for tuning in today. Subscribe and share this with your friends as well. As always, it's your time
and your money.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Your Time, Your Money. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to share this with friends, family, coworkers, anyone else that you think might be interested. If you do have questions or topics, you can always email them to irontreefinancial@ceterais.com. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Spotify, Google Play, and many other sources that were available. And you can reach us at 844-444-YTYM. And as always, it's your time and your money.